It's 6:30 a.m. The alarm sounds like a death sentence. Your body tenses before your mind fully awakens because it already knows what's coming. 8 more hours in that place you hate, doing things you don't care about, surrounded by people who talk about life as if it happened somewhere else, at another time. And yet, when someone asks why you don't quit, you hear yourself saying the same old excuses. I need the money, it's not that bad, at least it's stable. But inside, something dies a little more each day. This isn't a story about work. It's a story about one of the most sophisticated forms of slavery humanity has created, the golden prison of self-perceived necessity. Millions of people wake up every morning feeling like prisoners of their own lives, trapped in jobs they don't just dislike, but actively despise. And what's most disturbing isn't that they hate what they do, but that they've convinced themselves they have no alternative. We live in an era where freedom is theoretically infinite, where opportunities multiply daily, where technology has democratized access to almost any knowledge or tool you might need. And yet, more people than ever feel completely trapped in work situations they consider toxic to their soul. How is it possible that in the moment of greatest historical freedom, we experience the highest levels of psychological imprisonment? The answer isn't in external circumstances. It's in something much deeper and more disturbing. The way we've been programmed to relate to security, risk, and our own identity. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, that deep layer of the psyche where ancestral wisdom resides, but also our species' most primitive fears. And one of those most primitive fears is the terror of exclusion from the group, of running out of resources, of not having a place in the social structure that keeps us safe. Your job isn't just a job. It's your social identity, your business card to the world, proof that you're a productive member of society. When someone asks who you are, the first thing you respond isn't, I'm someone who loves music, or I'm someone who seeks beauty in the world. You respond, I'm an accountant, I'm a salesperson, I'm a manager. Your profession has become your identity, and quitting your job feels like quitting who you are. But there's something even deeper operating here. Most people don't really hate their job because of the tasks they perform or the place where they perform them. They hate their job because they intuit at an almost cellular level that they're betraying something essential in their nature. They're feeling what existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre would call bad faith. That sensation of living a life that isn't really yours, of playing a role you didn't consciously choose. Imagine for a moment that you're a born musician, someone who from childhood felt that sounds and rhythms were your natural language. But due to life circumstances, family expectations, economic necessity, you ended up working in a call center. Each day you spend in that cubicle, each forced conversation with irritated customers, each meeting about productivity metrics isn't just wasted time. It's an active betrayal of your essence. Your soul knows you're living someone else's life, and that's why it rebels with that sensation of emptiness, that Monday morning depression, that constant escape fantasy. The first level of this psychological prison is what we could call the survival trap. This is the voice that tells you that you need this job to survive, that you can't risk being without income. That better the devil you know than the devil you don't. This voice isn't completely wrong, but it's operating from a scarcity paradigm that distorts your perception of reality. The survival trap makes you believe the only options are this horrible job or total ruin, when reality is infinitely more nuanced. This trap feeds on what cognitive psychologists call catastrophic thinking, the tendency to always imagine the worst possible scenario. Your mind doesn't calculate real probabilities. It obsesses over the possibility, however remote, of complete disaster. What if I quit and can't get another job? What if I lose my house? What if my family judges me as irresponsible? These what-ifs become invisible chains that keep you immobile. But the survival trap is only the most superficial layer. Beneath it is something much more insidious, the prison of borrowed identity. Since you were a child, you've been taught that your worth as a person is directly related to your productive utility. It doesn't matter if you're intelligent, creative, empathetic, or wise. What matters is whether you have a good job, whether you generate stable income, whether you can justify your existence through your economic contribution to the system. This prison is particularly cruel because it disguises itself as virtue. They tell you that working at something you hate is being responsible, being mature, making sacrifices for your family. And you internalize this narrative to the point where quitting a toxic job feels like an act of selfishness or immaturity, even when that resignation could be the most loving act you could do for both yourself and the people around you. The third layer is perhaps the most subtle, but also most powerful. Addiction to illusory security. Human beings are biologically programmed to value predictability over growth. Our reptilian brain prefers the certainty of a known situation, even if it's painful, to the uncertainty of something new that could be better. That's why you remain in toxic relationships, in jobs you hate, in life patterns you know don't serve you. Your horrible job has become your perverted comfort zone. You know exactly what to expect each day. You know all the little horrors waiting for you. You've developed survival strategies for every unpleasant situation. There's a strange tranquility in that predictability, even when that predictability includes daily suffering. The idea of quitting doesn't just confront you with economic uncertainty. It confronts you with existential uncertainty of not knowing who you might become if you were truly free. Here's the fourth level, and perhaps the deepest: terror of your own potential. In the depths of your being, in that part of you that almost never dares to speak, you know you're capable of much more. You know you have unexplored talents, undeveloped ideas, dreams that could materialize if you had the courage to pursue them. And that paradoxically is terrifying. Because if you recognize you have the capacity to create an extraordinary life, then you also have to recognize that each day you remain in a job you hate is a conscious choice of mediocrity. Writer Marianne Williamson expressed it perfectly. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Staying in a job you hate is a form of self-sabotage that protects you from the overwhelming responsibility of living up to your real potential. And finally, there's what we could call the paralysis of the infinite. We live in an era of unlimited options, and that abundance of possibilities can be as paralyzing as scarcity. When everything is theoretically possible, choosing any specific thing feels like giving up everything else. Your mind is paralyzed before the infinitude of alternative paths, and paralysis resolves by keeping you exactly where you are, hating your job but unable to move toward anything else. But here's the revelation that can change everything. You don't hate your job because your job is objectively horrible. You hate your job because you've lost connection with your essential purpose, and any activity disconnected from your purpose feels like a betrayal of your soul. The problem isn't your toxic boss, your inadequate salary, or your irritating coworkers. The problem is that you've allowed external circumstances to define your internal experience of life. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, discovered something extraordinary during his years in concentration camps. He observed that the people who survived weren't necessarily the physically strongest, but those who maintained connection with a purpose that transcended their immediate circumstances. Frankl developed what he called logotherapy, the idea that the most fundamental human drive isn't the pursuit of pleasure or avoidance of pain, but the search for meaning. Your current job could transform completely if you could find a way to connect it with something you really care about. This doesn't mean positive self-suggestion or convincing yourself you love something you objectively hate. It means finding the thread of purpose that can exist even in the most apparently purposeless circumstances. Maybe you work in sales and hate the feeling of manipulating people to buy things they don't need. But what if you redefined your role as someone who helps people make informed decisions about products that could genuinely improve their lives? Or what if you saw your work as an opportunity to develop communication and human psychology skills you could use later in something you're more passionate about? This isn't an invitation to resignation, it's an invitation to alchemy, the capacity to transform the lead of difficult circumstances into the gold of wisdom and personal growth. Medieval alchemists sought the philosopher's stone that would transform any metal into gold. Your philosopher's stone is your capacity to find purpose and growth in any situation, no matter how apparently limiting. But let's also recognize this. There are jobs that are genuinely toxic, work environments that are destructive to mental and emotional health, and situations where the only healthy response is effectively to leave. The difference lies in how you leave. You can leave from fear, desperation, and impulsivity, or you can leave from clarity, purpose, and conscious strategy. Leaving from fear is reactive. It's that fantasy we've all had of simply not showing up one day, sending a resignation email full of resentment, burning all bridges in a moment of cathartic frustration. This way of leaving generally recreates the same patterns in the next job, because you haven't processed the lessons the current situation had to teach you. Leaving from clarity is completely different. It's a process that begins long before you hand in your resignation letter. It begins with an honest inventory of what exactly you hate about your current situation, and more importantly, what you love and value in life in general. It begins with the question, what would I want to do even if I weren't paid to do it? This question is revolutionary because it cuts through all external justifications and connects you directly with your intrinsic motivation. Most people have never asked themselves this question seriously because they've been conditioned to believe work is inherently something unpleasant we do only for money. But there exists a completely different category of human activity. Work that arises from passion, from genuine curiosity, from the desire to contribute to something greater than ourselves. The path out begins with small experiments. You don't need to quit tomorrow and bet all your economic security on an unproven idea. You can begin dedicating an hour a day, or some hours on weekends, to exploring those activities that truly excite you. You can begin developing skills in those areas that interest you. You can begin building connections with people who are already doing what you'd like to do. This gradual approach is not only more practical, it's psychologically healthier. It gives your mind time to adjust to the idea of a different life. It gives your nervous system time to develop confidence in new capacities. It gives your identity time to evolve from "I'm someone trapped in a horrible job" toward "I'm someone transitioning toward something better." But here's the real secret most people never discover: the moment you begin taking concrete actions toward the life you really want, your experience of your current job changes dramatically. You're no longer trapped. You're in transition. You're no longer a victim of circumstances. You're the architect of your escape. You're no longer wasting time. You're investing time while planning your next move. This shift in perspective is profoundly liberating. Your horrible job becomes the fuel that finances your transition. Each difficult day becomes additional motivation to build something better. Each frustration becomes clarity about what you don't want in your next chapter. Your prison becomes a graduate school in self-knowledge and determination. And something else happens when you begin consciously moving toward what you really want. The universe seems to conspire to help you. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, the appearance of meaningful coincidences that seem to support your growth and evolution. Opportunities appear that you didn't see before. You meet people who can help you just when you need them. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. This isn't magical thinking. It's the natural result of a change in your attention and energy. When you're depressed and resigned, your attention focuses on everything that's wrong, and you literally can't see the opportunities surrounding you. When you're motivated and moving toward a clear goal, your reticular activating system, that part of your brain that filters relevant information, begins to notice resources and possibilities that were always there. The process of liberating yourself from a job you hate isn't just a job change. It's an awakening to your own creative power, to your capacity to consciously design your life experience. It's an initiation into real adulthood, understanding that you're responsible not only for your actions, but for the interpretation you give to each experience. Because at the end of the day, freedom isn't the absence of limitations. Freedom is the capacity to consciously choose your response to any limitation. You can choose to see your current job as a prison, or you can choose to see it as a training station where you're developing the discipline, patience, and clarity you'll need to create the extraordinary life you really want. True freedom comes when you realize that even in the most apparently limiting circumstances, you always have the power to choose who you're going to be in that situation. You can choose to be someone who complains and victimizes themselves, or you can choose to be someone who learns and plans. You can choose to be someone who resents the present, or you can choose to be someone who uses the present as a springboard to the future. You don't need anyone's permission to begin living according to your deepest values. You don't need circumstances to change to begin being the person you want to be. You don't need your job to be perfect to begin cultivating excellence in yourself. You can begin right now, exactly where you are, with exactly what you have. Your current job, however horrible it may be, is the perfect context for developing the qualities you'll need to create something better. Resistance, patience, humility, determination, clarity about your values. Each day, you choose to show integrity in a situation you don't like. You're strengthening the moral muscle you'll need when you have more power and more options. The paradox is that when you stop running from your current situation and begin consciously using it as training for who you want to become, the situation becomes much more tolerable. And when it becomes more tolerable, you can make decisions about your future from a place of power and clarity instead of desperation and fear. The hatred toward your job is a compass pointing toward your true north. It's not something to flee from, but something to listen to carefully. That hatred is giving you precious information about what you really value, what you need to feel alive, what your soul is crying out for. Listen to that voice. Honor that information, but use it wisely, not to justify impulsive decisions that could create more problems, but to strategically design a life aligned with who you really are. Your freedom won't come when you find the perfect job. Your freedom will come when you realize you're already free, right now, to begin living according to your deepest values, regardless of where you're working. And that realization, that internal shift, is what will eventually manifest as external circumstances that reflect your true nature. The job you hate isn't your destiny, it's your starting point. It's the contrast that helps you define what you really want. It's the friction that's polishing the diamond of your character. It's the school where you're learning the lessons you'll need to create something extraordinary. You're not trapped. You've never been trapped. You've been learning, growing, developing, preparing. And when you're ready, not when circumstances are perfect, but when you are ready, you'll take the step toward the life you've been designing all this time. If something you've heard here resonates with you, if you feel that spark of recognition in your chest, share this message with someone who might need to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what was the moment you realized there was something more for you than the job you hate? Your story could be exactly what another person needs to hear to begin their own journey toward freedom.